You know that feeling when someone describes a personality quiz result and it's so generic? It could apply to literally anyone in the group chat. And then every once in a while you read something and your whole body goes still. Because it's not describing a type of person, it's describing you specifically in a way you've never seen written down before. That's not a coincidence. That's because what you're about to hear only applies to a small percentage of people. Most people will scroll past this in about 4 seconds. But if you're still here after the first 10, you're probably one of the rare ones. What you've always called being weird, or being too much, or being hard to read isn't a flaw. It's a rare wiring. And once you see all 9 signs laid out together, you're going to realize why almost nobody around you has ever fully understood you. The first sign is something you've felt since you were a kid but never had language for. You notice the exact moment a room shifts, not later, not when someone points it out. In the actual moment it happens. You're at a family dinner, and you clock the second your uncle's joke didn't land before anyone else even reacts. You're on a Zoom call and you sense your coworker went from engaged to checked out 3 seconds before their camera even turns off. Most people process a room after the fact. You process it live, in real time, like you're running commentary nobody asked for. It's not anxiety. It's not overthinking. It's a kind of perception most people simply don't have access to, and it's exhausting precisely because almost nobody else in the room is running the same software you are. And then there's the thing you do with memory that you've never really talked about. You don't just remember what happened. You remember how it felt in specific, almost cinematic detail years later. You remember the exact song that was playing during a conversation that changed something in you. You remember the tone of voice someone used one time in 2019, well enough that hearing a similar tone today, maybe from a stranger at Target or a coworker on a Monday morning, sends you right back there instantly, fully, like no time passed at all. Most people's memories fade into a general impression within a few weeks. Yours stays vivid, textured, almost recoverable on demand, complete with the lighting, the smell of the room, the exact words used. That's not you being sentimental or dramatic. That's a nervous system that encodes emotional information at a depth most people's simply doesn't. Which is exactly why old wounds can still ambush you out of nowhere on an ordinary Tuesday. Here's one that's going to feel oddly specific. You can be the strong one everyone leans on and the one who needs everyone to slow down, in the same week, sometimes in the same day. You'll talk a friend off a ledge on Tuesday and then completely shut down over something small on Thursday. And you genuinely don't understand how both of those are true about you. Most people are consistently one or the other. You are both, fully, without contradiction, because your capacity to hold other people's pain runs on the exact same wiring that makes your own pain hit harder than it seems to hit everyone else. What's harder to admit is how much you actually think in questions nobody's asking out loud. While everyone else in the group chat is reacting with a laughing emoji, you're 3 layers deep, wondering what that comment actually reveals about the person who said it, and what it means that they felt safe enough to say it here, and whether that says something about the group dynamic nobody's naming. You'll sit through an entire Thanksgiving dinner quietly mapping who's not speaking to who's performing for whom, and what nobody at that table is willing to say directly. You don't say any of this out loud most of the time because you've learned early on that it makes people uncomfortable, that naming what's actually happening in a room tends to get you called intense or too much. So you sit in a room full of surface-level conversation running an entirely different, far more honest conversation in your head, alone, every single time, and nobody at that table has any idea you're doing it. Now here's where the science actually explains what you've been living with your whole life. Dr. Stephen Porges at the University of North Carolina spent decades studying what he calls the polyvagal theory, the idea that your nervous system is constantly scanning the room for emotional and social information, completely below your conscious awareness, faster than your thinking brain can even keep up. For most people, that scanning system runs quietly in the background. For you, it runs louder, and it never really turns off. That's not a personality quirk. That's a measurable difference in how much of the room you're actually absorbing at any given moment compared to almost everyone standing next to you. And here's the part that sounds like a contradiction until you actually live it. You crave deep connection more than almost anyone you know, And you also need more alone time than almost anyone you know. Your friends sometimes take this personally, like canceling plans means you don't want to see them. It's the opposite. You want connection so badly and so deeply that shallow versions of it actually cost you more energy than being alone does. So you retreat, recharge, and come back wanting real conversation. Not because you're avoiding people, but because you can't do surface level with the same people you'd go to war for. Here's the one that shows up in every relationship you've ever had, whether it was romantic, platonic, or professional. You remember things people said that they've completely forgotten saying. A comment from 3 years ago that seemed throwaway to them lives permanently in your internal file on who that person actually is. You're not keeping score. You're not holding grudges. You're building an accurate, detailed model of everyone in your life based on evidence most people never even registered as evidence. It's why you're rarely surprised when someone finally shows their true colors. You clocked it years before anyone else did. Here's a pattern interrupt most people never see coming. You can walk into a room and physically feel what someone else is feeling before a single word gets said. Not guess it. Feel it, almost like it briefly becomes yours. Your friend sits down at the coffee shop table already smiling and talking about their weekend, and your chest still tightens because you clocked something off in their eyes before they said a word. Dr. Valeria Gazzola at the Netherlands Institute for Neuroscience has studied how certain people's brains fire mirror responses to other people's emotional states more strongly than average, essentially borrowing someone else's feeling for a moment as if it were their own. Most people call this being sensitive. What it actually is a form of perception so rare that the people around you rarely even realize you're carrying something that was never yours to carry in the first place. The part that's genuinely rare and the reason you've probably felt out of place in most rooms you've ever walked into is that you can hold two completely contradictory truths about a person or a situation at the same time without needing to resolve them into one clean answer. You can love someone and be furious with them in the exact same breath. You can understand exactly why someone hurt you and still feel the hurt fully, without letting the understanding cancel out the pain. Most people need to pick a side to feel settled. They either forgive completely or they cut someone off completely because sitting in the middle feels unbearable. You don't need resolution to feel at peace with complexity, which sounds like a strength until you realize almost nobody else is comfortable sitting in that gray area with you. That's exactly why you've spent your whole life feeling like you're translating yourself for everyone around you, simplifying what you actually think just so the room can keep up. What nobody's ever told you, and what you need to actually hear, is that none of this makes you difficult, or too intense, or hard to be around, no matter how many rooms have made you feel that way. It makes you rare in the most literal sense of that word. Statistically, biologically, genuinely uncommon. The reason so few people have ever fully gotten you is not because something is wrong with the way you're built. It's because you're one of the few people actually built this way, and most of the people around you simply aren't running the same operating system. You are allowed to stop shrinking a rare thing down to fit rooms that were never built to hold it in the first place. If even 3 of these felt like someone finally described the exact way your brain works, drop a comment and tell me which one hit hardest. I read every single one. And if you know someone who's spent their whole life feeling like the odd one out, send them this. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone rare is show them they're not actually alone. Subscribe if you want more psychology that actually meets you where you are.